Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be looking at the Dead Sons Adventure book number 1, Incident at Absalon Station. This was the very first Adventure Path book to be released for the Starfinder role-playing game. It's part 1 of a 6-part installment, and as you can see here, this is book, we can get it to focus, this is book number 1. So each of the Adventure Path books just continues this number, with the most recent one I think being 13 or 14. So anyway, this is a Adventure Path installment that actually came out sort of around the same time as the core rulebook, but actually predates the releases of other books such as Alien Archive and the Pact Worlds campaign setting book. In fact, the first couple installments at the very least predate Alien Archive, and a fair amount of the chapters are released before we get to the Pact Worlds book. So overall, the Dead Sons Adventure Path serves as a really great way to introduce the players to the setting. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to try to keep this spoiler light. So I don't want to get into a lot of details as to specific encounters or specific revelations of information. I may do a more spoiler-heavy video later on when I talk about the Adventure Path as a whole. But right now I want to talk about this opening chapter in a way that's not going to give everything away if you're someone who's playing in this, or maybe playing in this, and you want to watch the video. So this adventure is designed for a group of first-level characters, so brand new starting characters. And essentially, just based on sort of like their skills or abilities that they may have, they have been sort of recruited or potentially recruits of the Starfinder Society, which is one of the big factions in the Starfinder role-playing game. When the characters arrive at Absalon Station, they get off their ship and they're about to meet with their contact within the Starfinder Society, when they get caught in the crossfire between two rival gangs. During the shootout, the character's representative that they're meeting there from the Starfinder Society, unfortunately he gets caught in the fire himself and doesn't make it. He's killed, just isn't able to pull through. From there, the characters are kind of pushed towards or suggested that they investigate the gangs and see what their motivations were, why they were at the docking bay sort of thing, and what's behind these escalated hostilities sort of thing. So the characters have to go on sort of a investigative portion of the adventure. So they go from having like the action at the very beginning to getting into more of a role-playing situation where they're trying to, they're speaking with people, they're trying to gather information, and a really good, again, part of the adventure because it sort of shifts gears, so to speak. As a result of their investigations, they are approached by a representative, or a diplomat, I should say, from the planet Eox. This is him right here, actually. It's a planet that's ruled primarily by undead. However, he is the arbitrator in a dispute between two corporations that are kind of feuding over a derelict ship that had just recently approached Absalon Station. Its crew is nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be heard, and it was towing behind it this large piece of drift rock that it got out of the drift. The ship is currently quarantined and is prohibited from entering or docking with the station, and where he is the arbiter in this dispute, and based on the player character's sort of reputation after their investigation or involvement in the shootout that takes place at the beginning of the adventure, he contacts them to sort of investigate the ship, see what they can find, and if there's information on there that can be helpful in sort of just settling this dispute. He also has a more personal request, but again, I don't want to go into those details. So the characters, at this point, they go onto the ship itself and try to discover what happened to its crew before ultimately investigating the drift rock itself. At this point, that's where their transport ship that took them over disembarks, and the characters are sort of left in a lurch. How are they going to get back to the station? Well, there may be something in one of the rooms in the drift rock that can certainly help them back, and it's a just reward. So this is basically, again, it's not a huge spoiler at this point in time, just because there's a map out for it, and is featured prominently in, the other adventure path installments as well. So basically, there is a decades-old abandoned ship, which we see here that the characters earn by the end of the adventure. So that's a mild spoiler, but again, it's sort of just, I don't think it's the biggest spoiler in the adventure. And that basically concludes the adventure portion of the book, and then we get into some more detailed information on Absalon Station itself. So if you're looking for a little bit more detail on it than what's in the core rulebook, then this has it for you. Again, keep in mind, most of this particular adventure path came out before the Pact Worlds book, so most of these installments of the 6 are going to have information on the planets of the Pact World, so that you could really run the adventures properly, and you sort of go from there. So you have, the information that you need. And then we have our creature catalog, our alien archives, which has all of the creatures that the characters could potentially fight or encounter, I should say, in this particular adventure. And then we have just the map of the Sunrise Maiden, the ship, in the back here. So that is the Dead Suns adventure path. Like I said, there's some twisted turns and stuff along the way that I don't really want to get into in this particular video. I do plan on doing a review of the storylines as a whole at some point in the near future. Basically waiting to have the Dawn of Flame adventure path wrap up, so that I can look at all 4 of those together, so that they're full comprehensive stories. Overall, Incident Absalon Station, in my opinion, is a really, really fantastic adventure. And I know there is sort of the issue of it coming out before the Alien Archive book, the monster book with all the creatures and stuff. But you're still covered here because everything that you have, that you need to have to run the adventure, is in here. There are references to things that will be explained in further details, like creature graphs, for example. Basically templates that you can add to sort of modify creatures to fit, what we have here, like some of the undead are pretty strong examples of that. And yes, it does direct you to the Alien Archive in order to fully understand how that works. So, out of the gate, you're not able to really use those effectively, but at the same time, I can't really look at it from that perspective, unfortunately, because I didn't get this until well after I'd gotten Alien Archive, and actually both Alien Archive and the Pact Worlds book. I tried to get it a lot sooner than that, but unfortunately the game store that I got my stuff from, they had it on back order, and months I went by, and if it wasn't for the kindness of the people at Paizo, I probably still wouldn't have this particular installment today, and I wouldn't be able to conclude all 6 parts of this adventure. I think that one of the things that I really like about this opening chapter is that there are different sort of it shifts gears, I guess was the phrase that I used earlier. And so you have your action-packed opening, with this big sort of brawl that takes place. You get this firefight that happens on the station. But then the characters actually have to do some role-playing. And there's some really good role-playing opportunities. They get to use their skills for investigations to try to figure out what's going on. They get to deal with, some diplomats, and they get involved in some of like the politics and scheming thereof. And they get to do some just good old-fashioned exploration, I should say, when they get over to the derelict ship, and even onto the Drift Rock itself. It leaves a lot of things open, which is something, again, that I really think is good in a book that's meant to be the first part of a much larger story. So it doesn't really answer any of those questions as to what the Drift Rock is and what its significance is, but future installments will certainly cover that. But again, I just like the way that it handles the different types of interactions that the players can have with NPCs and just the things that they can do in general. So I think this is a very well-rounded adventure. There is one starship battle that takes place sort of midway through, but it takes place at a point where it just sort of feels like a natural location or natural time to have one of these encounters. So anyway, I highly recommend this actually. So if you're looking to get into the Starfinder role-playing game, especially if you have the core rulebook yet and you haven't picked up any of the other books, you can actually run this adventure with just the core rulebook, and I think that that's something that comes in handy, where some of the future Adventure Path installments, and rightfully so, require you to have access to the Alien Archive book. But again, if you're just sort of getting your feet wet, or dipping your toe in the water, so to speak, of Starfinder, which is an excellent system overall, this is a great way to sort of get a feel for how the game plays. As someone who wasn't huge into sci-fi, and not really huge into sci-fi or stuff like that when I first picked up the Starfinder books, this adventure I think really would have sold me on it even sooner than I already was. So really great adventure, definitely worth checking out. The adventure path as a whole, I believe, is totally worth checking out, but I'll get into more detail on that in a future video. So I hope you enjoyed this video. So like I said, this is the opening chapter for the Dead Sun's adventure path. There are three total adventure paths, including this one at the time that I'm recording this, that have been published to their completion. So we have the Dead Sun's adventure path, the Against the Iron Throne adventure path, which was a 3-part instead of a 6-part, and the Signal of Screams, which is also a 3-part. So if you want to see information on the opening chapters for those 2 adventure paths that have also been completed at the time that I'm recording this in March of 2019, then I will leave something at the end of this video that you can click on to check those out. Later on this week, hopefully, in the next few days, I will have my review of Firestarters, which is the opening chapter of the 4th, and at this point in time, the most current adventure path. So I'll have that up as well, and then we'll have all 4 of them. I also plan on doing a video directly comparing the opening chapters for all 4 of those adventure paths once I get the other review out of the way. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you've played the Dead Sun's adventure path, let me know in the comments below what you thought. Were you one of the individuals who started running this at a time before Alien Archive and before Pact Worlds and before those books were made available? And if so, let me know what some of the, I guess, I don't want to say struggles, but some of the complexities of running it before those books came out were for you. Because, again, I can't put myself in that mindset, because I've had those books before I got this one. So I'd be really interested to hear what some of those struggles were. So thank you guys very much for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Take care.